Hello. Today, we would like to introduce to you a practical process of resource-based approach to strategy formulation, developed by Grant in 1991 on the California Management Review. We organize the presentation in 5 stages of process for strategy formulation on the basis of 2 premises, that the resources and capabilities are the foundation for strategy of the firm. First, internal resources and capabilities provide the basic direction for a firm's strategy. Second, resources and capabilities are the primary source of profit for the firm. For the first stage of procedure for strategy formulation, Grant distinguishes 6 major categories of resource have been suggested: financial resources, physical resources, human resources, technological resources, reputation, and organizational resources. These resources are inputs into the production process. They are the basic units of analysis. The individual resources of the firm include items of capital equipment, skills of individual employees, patents, brand names, finance, and so on. But, on their own, few resources are productive. For identifying the productive resources, firm managers should answer 2 following questions by appraising its strengths and weaknesses relative to competitors. Firstly, what opportunities exist for economizing on the use of resources? It concerns the ability to maximize productivity that is particularly important in the case of tangible resources such as plant and machinery, finance, and people. It may involve using fewer resources to support the same level of business, or using the existing resources to support a larger volume of business. Secondly, what are the possibilities for using existing assets more intensely and in more profitable employment? This is the case in practice, in which a large proportion of corporate acquisitions are motivated by the belief that the resources of the acquired company can be put to more profitable use. The returns from transferring existing assets into more productive employment can be substantial. In the second stage of procedure for strategy formulation, a firm's capabilities can be identified and appraised using a standard functional classification of the firm's activities. The term of core competencies can be used to describe these central strategic capabilities. They are the collective learning in the organization, especially how to coordinate diverse production skills and integrate multiple streams of technology. Also, the concept of organizational routines offers illuminating insights into the relationships between resources, capabilities, and competitive advantage. Organizational routines are regular and predictable patterns of activity which are made up of a sequence of coordinated actions by individuals. A capability is a routine or a number of interacting routines. The organization itself is a huge network of routines. These include the sequence of routines which govern the passage of raw material and components through the production process, and top management routines which include routines for monitoring business unit performance, for capital budgeting and for strategy formulation. Here, the critical task is to assess capabilities relative to those of competitors by identifying the resources inputs to each capability and the complexity of each capability. Firm manager should find what capacities that allow the firm doing more effectively than its rivals. There is a key problem in appraising capabilities is maintaining objectivity, where organizations frequently fall victim to past glories, hopes for the future, and wishful thinking. Failure is often due to strategies which extend the firm's activities beyond the scope of its capabilities. The third stage of procedure for strategy formulation consists to evaluate the rent-earning potential, including 2 contents: first, the sustainability of the competitive advantage which resources and capabilities confer upon the firm, and second, the ability of the firm to appropriate the rents earned from its resources and capabilities. Concerning the sustainability, the resource-based approaches to the theory of competitive advantage point towards 4 characteristics of resources and capabilities, which are likely to be particularly important determinants of the sustainability of competitive advantage. Specifically, firstly, the durability means that how long until a resource creating competitive advantage becomes obsolete or depreciate. In the absence of competition, the longevity of a firm's competitive advantage depends upon the rate at which the underlying resources and capabilities depreciate or become obsolete. Secondly, if a firm wishes to imitate the strategy of a rival, it must first establish the capabilities which underlie the rival's competitive advantage, and then it must determine what resources are required to replicate these capabilities. We refer to this as the transparency of competitive advantage. Such transparency means that the firm's ability to sustain its competitive advantage over time depends upon the speed with which other firms can imitate its strategy. The third characteristic of resources and capabilities, which are likely to be particularly important determinants of the sustainability of competitive advantage, concerns its transferability. Firm can proceed resources and capacities necessary for a competitive challenge in the markets for these inputs. However, most resources and capabilities are not freely transferable between firms. Imperfections in transferability arise from several sources as geographical immobility, imperfect information, firm-specific resources and immobility of capabilities. The last characteristic of resources and capabilities creating the sustainable competitive advantage of the firm consists in its replicability. Theoretically, with the exception of market, a firm can also acquire a resource or capability by internal investment. However, much less easily replaceable are capabilities based upon highly complex organizational routines. Even where replication is possible, the dynamics of stock flow relationships may still offer an advantage to incumbent firms. Competitive advantage depends upon the stock of resources and capabilities that a firm possesses. The returns to a firm from its resources and capabilities depend not only on sustaining its competitive position over time, but also on the firm's ability to appropriate these returns. The issue of appropriability concerns the allocation of rents where property rights are not fully defined. Once we go beyond the financial and physical assets valued in a company's balance sheet, ownership becomes ambiguous. The firm owns intangible assets such as patents, copyrights, brand names, and trade secrets, but the scope of property rights may lack precise definition. In the case of employee skills, two major problems arise: the lack of clear distinction between the technology of the firm and the human capital of the individual, and the limited control which employment contracts offer over the services provided by employees. Employee mobility means that it is risky for a firm's strategy to be dependent upon the specific skills of a few key employees. Also, such employees can bargain with the firm to appropriate the major part of their contribution to value added. Where ownership is ambiguous, relative bargaining power is the primary determinant of the allocation of the rents between the firm and its employees. If the individual employee's contribution to productivity is clearly identifiable, if the employee is mobile, and the employee's skills offer similar productivity to other firms, then the employee is well placed to bargain for that contribution. The degree of control exercised by a firm and the balance of power between the firm and an individual employee depends crucially on the relationship between the individual's skills and organizational routines. The more deeply embedded are organizational routines within groups of individuals, and the more are they supported by the contributions of other resources, then the greater is the control that the firm's management can exercise. So, the less identifiable is the individual's contribution, and the more firm-specific are the skills being applied, the greater is the proportion of the return which accrues to the firm. In the fourth stage of procedure for strategy formulation, designing strategy around the most critically important resources and capabilities may imply that the firm limits its strategic scope to those activities where it possesses a clear competitive advantage. The ability of a firm's resources and capabilities to support a sustainable competitive advantage is essential to the time frame of a firm's strategic planning process. If a company's resources and capabilities lack durability or are easily transferred or replicated, then the company must either adopt a strategy of short-term harvesting or it must invest in developing new sources of competitive advantage. Where a company's resources and capabilities are easily transferable or replaceable, sustaining a competitive advantage is only feasible if the company's market is unattractively small, or if it can obscure the existence of its competitive advantage. For the industries that competitive advantages based upon differentiation and innovation can be imitated, firms must be concerned not with sustaining the existing advantages, but with creating the flexibility and responsiveness to that permits them to create new advantages at a faster rate than the old advantages are being eroded by competition. Resource-based approach to strategy is concerned not only with the deployment of existing resources, but also with the development of the firm's resource base. In the fifth stage of procedure for strategy formulation, this includes replacement investment to maintain the firm's stock of resources and to augment resources in order to buttress and extend positions of competitive advantage as well as broaden the firm's strategic opportunity set. This task is known in the strategy literature as filling resource gaps. Also, through pursuing its present strategy, a firm develops the expertise required for its future strategy as dynamic resource fit. The development of capabilities which can then be used as the basis for broadening a firm's product range is a common feature of successful strategies of related diversification. In addition, in order both to fully exploit a firm's existing stock of resources, and to develop competitive advantages for the future, the external acquisition of complementary resources may be necessary. In conclusion, the resources and capabilities of a firm are the central considerations in formulating its strategy. They are the primary constants upon which a firm can establish its identity and frame its strategy, and they are the primary sources of the firm's profitability. This resource-based process of strategy formulation contributes as foundation of the resource-based view of competitive advantage, especially for strategy formulation by developing a practical framework of a resource-based approach to strategy analysis. We finish here the presentation. Thanks for your views and subscription to our channel. And see you in the next video.